This is Steve Cochran, and this is live from my office. And it's true, I do it from my office. I am sitting in my home office, and I'm talking to you. And I appreciate the fact that you're listening. Now, could you go out and tell a few more to listen? The numbers have been great. The show has grown by leaps and bounds. We're, a year and a half in? And we're in many countries. And including the United States, and it's important that we're in that one. And it's just been a lot of fun. So I want the fun to continue. And, we talk about serious stuff here. We talk about funny stuff here. Goofy stuff, good stuff, bad stuff, all of it. And I always encourage you to stay in contact with me. Drop me a note about anything, any questions you have, any answers you have, any suggestions you have. You could do that at The Cochran Show at gmail.com. The good people at Apt have given me some more gift cards to give away for the holidays. We'll be doing that starting next week for at least a few episodes before we wrap up this season during the holiday season. And, of course, we've got our big New Year's show coming up this year. A little bit different. It's a matinee, kids. So if you are like me and you're not getting any younger, you may be thrilled with the fact that we're doing a show at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Either way, even if you're not thrilled, that's the time of the show. So I hope you'll come out to the beautiful Rao Theater in Crystal Lake. 3 o'clock show on New Year's Eve. John DeCoste will be there. He'll probably even do some singing with that fabulous voice of his. Tim Benker will be there. Very funny Tim Benker. There is something wrong with him. And one of the best stand-ups, period, anywhere. Mike Toomey. You see him on Channel 9 every morning. And he'll be there as well, as will I. Special guests include Ross Cochran, the executive producer of this podcast. He'll be there making a special appearance. Paul Coit is flying from London. He'll be there. And we've got a couple other announcements to make, too, but not quite yet. Get your tickets at the Rouse Center. Go to the box office website, RAUE Center, rousecenter.org. And you can call the box office anytime, too, at 815-356-9212, 815-356-9212. As usual, the ticket prices are really, really reasonable. And, frankly, they're cheaper than they ought to be. So I think you should pay more than the list price. But that's just me. That's just me. If you want to pay the price that they're actually listed at, I guess I'm okay with that as well. I just want to see you. That's all. I want to see you for the holidays and see you on New Year's Eve, 3 o'clock at the Rouse Center in Crystal Lake. Thank you, David Hochberg, title sponsor of Live from My Office. We couldn't do this without him, and he knows that. You can hear David every Saturday morning on WGN right after, who's the tall guy? Manfredini. As David Hochberg does Home Sweet Home Chicago, and anything you ever needed to know related to the money and your home and getting the most out of both, Hochberg has those answers at 855-56-DAVID, 56david.com, or right there on the radio on WGN. You can, again, listen to him on Saturday mornings. All right. That kind of catches us up. You can subscribe, like, follow wherever you're listening to this podcast, and I hope you will, because then you won't miss an episode. And a gift for the holidays that keeps on giving. Take your mom, your dad, your uncle, your aunts, your grandparents, anybody who is not necessarily as podcast savvy as you, and show them how to download it, subscribe for them, and they will get all the episodes of Live from My Office. I don't know about you. I like to read. And on today's episode, we've got a couple of great books to recommend. David Baldacci's back. The Atlee Pine series, if you're a Baldacci fan, is rapidly coming to a close. Or is it? And Mercy is his latest. Always love talking to him. David Baldacci, a guy, think about when you were in school and the most frightening things you could have heard is, there's an essay. David Baldacci writes to relax. And it turns out he's pretty good at it. He's just prolific. So Baldacci will be on. And then another book I'm highly recommending, and I'm a little biased about this one because it's a friend of mine. He endured the most horrible thing a parent can. He lost his 21-year-old son a few years ago, and it's changed the course of his life and his family's as well. Joe McQuillen is his name, and he's back with another book about his son Christopher. Hopefully you read his first. This one is We're Not Done Yet, Pop, and We'll talk to Joe about that as well. They're both on this program. So let's get started by taking a break first and coming back with David Baldacci. Right after this on Live from My Office. If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance the one you're in, then you need to do what I did. I called Team Hochberg, my trusted local lender, and yours too. Tom, a trucker, service-connected, disabled Army vet, income $62,000 a year, and married to Cindy, a homemaker with 2 kids aged 4 and 6. Tom and Cindy were tired of renting from a disconnected and uninterested property owner and wanted to purchase a home with a VA loan because Tom earned it while he served in the Army. Team Hochberg answered all of Tom and Cindy's questions and helped them secure a VA loan on their new home with no money down, no VA funding fee due to Tom's service-connected disability, and no private mortgage insurance. See, Hochberg knows all of the angles, all the rules, all the ways to help you get through this stuff. Team Hochberg helped me and thousands of my podcast listeners, just like Tom and Cindy. They helped them secure financing on new homes, and they want to help you too. But they can't do it if you don't call. That's your step. 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. 855-563-2843 or 56david.com. And don't forget to tune in to Home Sweet Home Chicago, hosted by David Hochberg, Saturday mornings after House Smarts at 10 a.m. Homeside Financial is an equal housing lender. NMLS number 1124061. David Baldacci joins me again. It's always a pleasure to have you on Live from My Office. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Good to be back.
And I appreciate you taking time away from turkey buying and giblet making. It's nice of you.
Absolutely, yes. Need a break.
Are you handy in the kitchen? Do you cook at all?
I assist my wife when she allows me to. I like to do the chopping, a little bit of the sous shopping, but I know that I make a few things, but not really into it. My son's into a lot more than I am. So he's a really good cook.
See, what I do is when the family gets together, I go into the kitchen immediately. I'm a big hug guy, hugs for everybody, and then I immediately break something. And as soon as I break something, I'm ordered out of the kitchen and forced to watch football. I'm not telling you to do that, David. I'm just saying it's my thing.
I like that. That's a plan.
So,
that's a strategy.
You mentioned your son. Do your kids read your stuff?
Yeah, they do. They haven't read everything, but yeah, most of them do. My daughter, the really, really scary stuff she tends to go away from. She doesn't read everything. My son reads, pretty much all of it. And I never made them, told them to. If they want to do it, they can. If they don't, that's fine.
Yeah, but you're good at it, so it's entertaining, right? But here's the thing: family is always the toughest critic. Are they tough critics?
My wife certainly is. I give her, early drafts of the manuscript to read. And again, I don't want her to tell me what's right with the book, although it would be nice to. I tend to know what's strong about it. I need to tell me where I'm not getting the point across, where I'm being sort of convoluted, where I'm telling too much, telling too little, and things like that. And she's really good at that.
That's a great tip, for lack of a better word, for writers, I suppose. Is the story in your head has to be a story on the page for people that don't know what's in your head, right? So you have to find a way to tell the story without already knowing where you're going. Do you ever run into that wall?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a tendency for some writers to overcomplicate plots because they think like they're telegraphing things because they know everything, all the red herrings, the twists, the turns, and the resolution. So you really have to get in the head of the reader and wipe all that away because they don't know that. So you just have to sort of pretend you're a reader, third party sitting out there reading the story along, knowing only what you know on the page in front of you, not what's coming. And all of a sudden your plots tend to be less convoluted, and a lot more streamlined. And the message has a greater clarity. So I found that to be good.
Yeah, and that's a free one. The next one we asked David about, he has to charge you.
Right.
So
he's American Express.
Right, exactly. So Mercy is Atlee Pine has gone through hell in her life. She's an amazingly strong woman, but she appears to come from a family of secrets. Sell the book without giving it away.
Yeah, so the first novel was A Long Road to Mercy, and Atlee Pine's an FBI agent stationed in Arizona near the Grand Canyon. When she was 6 years old, her twin sister Mercy was abducted, and Pine was almost killed by the kidnapper. And it ruined Pine's family. Their parents got divorced, her mother disappeared, her father disappeared, leaving only Pine by herself. And at the end of Long Road to Mercy, she decided, look, in order for me to move ahead in my life, I got to figure this out. I have to some closure, some resolution about what happened to my twin. Otherwise, I'm dead in the water. And she spent the next 3 books, including Mercy, finding out actually what happened to her sister. And she does it with a lot of trepidation. I mean, last time we saw her sister, she was 6. She was, blonde, pigtails, cute. Everything was happy and smiling, and they were just kids having fun. And 30 years have gone by, and with each book, the onion layers get peeled away, and you find out terrible things have happened to Mercy. So Pine knows that when she finds her, if she finds her alive, she is not going to be the little girl with pigtails anymore. She's going to be something really unrecognizable, and I think that really scares the crap out of Pine.
So, and by the way, that's a good slug for the book. It'll scare the crap out of Pine. David, I'm giving you tips you don't need. Do you have the ending of a 4-book arc like this? Pardon me. Do you have the ending of a 4-book arc like this when you start, or does it come to you as you write?
Yeah, it grows organically. I'm not going to think ahead 4 books in 4 years and trying to figure out everything from the get-go. You really have to delve into the book, immerse yourself in the trenches of the story, and then all of a sudden things start to come to you as you're in the urgency of the moment with the characters and the storyline. To sit there, at the very beginning with an outline and try to figure out everything before you've even met the characters on the page is just, for me, it's fruitless. So I'd be wasting a lot of time. I like to get into the trenches and then things occur to you. When you're writing the novel, it's very different from writing a novel than writing an outline. When you're writing the novel, you're in the moment. It's urgent. The stakes are high. Things are actually happening. You're not just outlining something that will happen in the future. And I find like my brain works faster. I get to integrate with my characters better. And the communications back and forth are a lot better too. And everything gets heightened for me. And that's how I like to write it.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I think you're good at this, you and I are about the same age, and you could leave this at any time, but I recently saw a clip in preparing to talk to you today of you talking about how you go back on the road, you go back to the hotel. What are you going to do, hit the minibar and watch TV? No, you're right, because you write for fun. It's fun for you. I hate to break it to you, David Baldacci, the minibar's fun.
Well, I can use the minibar and write at the same time.
Good point.
Come and walk, so I'm good there. But it is, and I've never lost that, childlike fascination with telling a story. If it gets down to just it's a job for you, then it's going to be like any other job. You put your time in, but you're really thinking about something else you'd rather do with your time. So you finish your page for the day or the words for the day, and you're out the door. And that's fine. A lot of writers do that to make a good living, but that's just not how I want to do this. I want to sit down like a little kid who's writing his first story every time and have that fascination with it, because I think it makes the story better at the end of the day. I'm not pulling a paycheck. I'm trying to create something that didn't exist before I thought of it. And that's a really special endeavor, and you should treat it not like a job, but like an inspiration all the time. Yeah, I make a great living writing, but I think if I focus on the fact that I make a great living writing, then I'm focusing on all the wrong things, and all of a sudden my stories get to be sort of mundane.
You and I both know you have colleagues at your Tier 1 A+ level of authorship that don't write every word, and they put out tons and tons of books. You're coming up, am I right about this? You're at about 50 books in 25 years?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
How in God's name, David Baldacci, do you keep pumping them out?
Every day, that's what I think about. It's what drives me. I think if you have the inner motor, you can do it a couple of different ways. If you have the inner motor and all you want to do is just keep telling stories and everything you see sort of fascinates you, and you see a story element walking down the street with 2 people talking, you're never going to run out of ideas, and you're never going to run out of that desire to just keep rolling with it. They talk about athletes who has a motor that never quits. I feel like I'm a writer who has a motor who never quits, because I spent years of my life writing and never made a dime doing it. It was just for the sheer joy of learning a craft and telling a story, and I never lost that. Now I get paid to do it, but it hasn't changed how I approached writing. And other writers can do it however they want. If they want to hire writers to write the stuff for them, that's fine. I have no problem with that at all. But for me, it takes away the sheer joy of why I do it in the first place. I mean, I like to think of the ideas. I like to develop the characters. I like to come up with the words and the vocabulary and the phrases to make a book interesting. So if you take that away, then it just really becomes about the money. And that's not why I became a writer.
I like to think of you as a guy banging away on a classic Smith Corona typewriter in the corner, sweating out your deadline. But, we don't live in that era, and your fingers would have fallen off by now. Are you a tech-savvy guy, and is there a tool you use to help you get all this done?
I mostly type on a laptop or a desktop. I write wherever I happen to be, planes, trains, automobiles, parking lots, in the middle of a restaurant. And I still write in longhand quite a bit. I always like to write the first few chapters in longhand because I think better in cursive.
Oh, that's
I tell
great.
people that, and sometimes they look at me like, what the hell does that mean? Try it. You'll trust me, you do. And then I like to edit in longhand. I'll print it all out and take out my pen and just blade the pages. That's really where the manuscript becomes a novel. I don't dictate into anything. I don't, write stuff down for other people to type up. I like doing that. I don't like having people in between the process. So for me, it's a labor of love, but it is a labor. It's hard to create these stories and write a book. But I couldn't imagine doing anything else with my time.
It sounds like you don't run into walls. I mean that in the big picture. Golfers never say the word shank. You should never say writer's block to a writer. So I didn't say that to you. I just said it out loud. But there's got to be, somewhere in your home, files of ideas where you thought this is a book or this is a character and it didn't get to where you wanted to go, but maybe you use it someday, or do you not work that way?
Yeah, there's always stuff. I don't have a lot of files sitting around with discarded ideas in them, but I certainly remember things that I thought might be interesting to write, but maybe I wasn't in the right frame of mind at that time. I could always bring things out and do it later when I am in the right frame of mind, and that material appeals to me more. But, I like to get up every day and walk out the door and embrace life, see people, watch people, see things going on in the world, read everything I possibly can. People talk about, how many ideas do you have left? I said, look, as long as I continue to live and see what's going on in the world, the ideas keep coming. New ones replace old ones. So I think writers need to be curious and aware of what's going on around them and just voraciously, thirst for knowledge and information. That's what I do. I love knowing things. I love learning new things. And the more you know, the more interesting stories you can come up with.
Have you ever had a book that you thought this is a smash and it turned out to be a really dumb idea?
Early on in my career, I would be too hasty into sitting down and trying to write something. It was a cool idea and this is going to be a lot of fun. I did that more often with screenplays than with a novel. And I'd run off and I'd write it and I'd get halfway through and I'd realize that it wasn't enough material to justify a screenplay. The idea, while it started out well, collapsed in the middle and there was no third act. And I hadn't really thought that through. So those things happen, but now I really sit down and I think about what I want to write about, particularly if I'm writing a new series. I'm bringing back an Amos Decker or a Will Roby or an Atlee Pine, and what am I going to do with this character this time? What's plausible? What fits with what I've written about them in the past? What's the new direction I want to take them in? How do I want to evolve the character? When you start putting those different things together and those needs together that you want to accomplish, then you can start building and crafting plot lines around that. But again, once I have that sort of in my mind, then I start to write. And then it slowly builds and organically grows from that sort of one germ of an idea of how I want to take this character and what plot I want to put them in. The rest of it, you just sit down at sweat equity and you work through it every day.
Yeah, there's not a lot of guys, though, that struggle with screenplays. And by the way, kids, if you really want to give yourself a headache, try to write a movie and then wait for the meeting. Because Hollywood's fun like that. But your first book was a smash hit movie as well. Tell everybody what that was.
Yeah, Absolute Power. Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman. It was
those two hacks.
Yeah, absolutely. They were nobodies before Absolute Power, and everybody. But all the moons were in alignment on that. It's not easily how Hollywood works at all. It's like, hurry up and wait. Yeah, it's going to happen. No, I'm sorry, it's never going to happen. And it was a great experience. I got to meet them. I went to the set. I worked with Bill Goldman, the screenwriter, on the script. And
one of the legends.
One of the legends, absolutely. And so that was a very heady experience for me. But I've seen the highs and lows. I've had other movies made. I've had TV series made. I've got 2 TV projects now that are going to be coming to the screen. But, then you have a long period of time where nothing is happening, and you just and for me, it's like, okay, that doesn't really matter. Yeah, I'd like to have my stuff made into films, TV. That's fine if it's done well. But I've still got my books. That's what I do. So I keep plugging away, and eventually people come and say, hey, this is good stuff. Hey, you're really popular. You got a lot of following. Let's do something together. And then if their visions align with what I want, I've turned down a lot of people who come and say, I want to do this with Amos Decker. I want to do this with Atlee Pine. And I'm like, no, that's just not what I want. And that's the only protection a writer has. You hear so many writers say, oh my God, I sold my book and they just destroyed it and I hate it and I want to sue people. I'm like, no, don't do that. Look, the only thing you can do is sit down with the people, get their vision for what it's going to be, act like, feel like you can trust them. And if those visions align and you feel good about the person, then step back and let them do what they do. If the result is good or bad, that's all you can do. My litmus test is, and this has served me well over 25 years dealing with Hollywood, I never want to have so much control over a film or book project such that if it fails, they can blame me.
Know what you know and control what you know.
That's right.
So you brought up the TV projects, and again, we're talking with David Baldacci. The new book is Mercy. The Atlee Pine series continues. I don't know if you're referring to this, but I know you did a deal with Hallmark. You write a lot of hard stuff that's, thrilling, and there's some violence and sex and things. And how'd you hook up with Hallmark?
Yeah, so I think I'm the only thriller writer that's had 2 Hallmark movies made. I wrote 2 books years ago. One was A Christmas Train, and they optioned it and then filmed it a few years ago, and it's still the highest rated Hallmark movie of all time.
It's a great movie, it really is. Great family movie.
Yeah, it really was. They had a really good sort of an un-Hallmark cast. Most of the people in them, were major film stars, and they hadn't really done Hallmark movies. I thought it was really good. It was
I did too.
The book. And then one summer, I got a call from my agent, ironically, this summer, and said, did you know that Hallmark was filming one summer? They'd optioned it years ago. I didn't think they were going to do anything with it. I was like, no, I didn't know. So it came out in October and did really, really well. And Hallmark called my agent up and said, hey, this stuff really works well for us. Does David have anything else in his back pocket he'd like to
right, of course,
throw our way? And so, but I think it's just, I write what I want to write about at that moment in time. And those were 2 books that I wanted to write. They weren't thrillers, but I didn't really care. They were stories I wanted to tell, and I don't want people to sort of put me in a box and label me and set me to the side and think they understand what makes me tick. I write a lot of different stuff.
So educate me. How many books or how many hits do you have to have before you no longer have to write a proposal, or the publisher doesn't say, hey, man, we need this and we need it by then? Yeah,
it's interesting that my first book was so successful that really after that, and quite frankly, I'd started writing my second book before the first book even came out because I didn't know if it was going to be successful or not. I figured I better just keep working. And the publishers, really very early on came to trust me that, one, I've never missed a deadline in 25 years. I'm always ahead of the schedule. And I'm the fastest turnaround in editing, what would take other writers, and I don't say this gratuitously, I've just been told this by so many editors, it's gotten old. They send out a manuscript for, with copy edits on it, they want to returned, and, most writers, turn it back in a month, and I'll turn it back in 3 days. Because once I get that back, I'm just hungering to attack it. And I think nothing else for the amount of time I'm in front of that manuscript, and all my total focus is on it, and I turn stuff back in. That with other publishers too. I wrote a children's fantasy series for Scholastic, and they would tell me that their authors, they would send out the manuscript for the editing, and they would get it back in 6 months, and they said you send it back in 4 days, and they've never seen anything like that.
Well, a lot of writers, I suppose, are tired, or maybe tired of it, and they don't want to tackle it again. But your way of doing it is the way that works.
Yeah, it does, because I want to see, what their comments and thoughts were. And then oftentimes the comments are like, this scene isn't working. So it's not like they have an idea for how to fix it, but not only do I fix that scene, I realize that scene also impacts something that's happened 200 pages earlier, and I need to go address that as well. So I love the comments because they inspire me for multiple things beyond what the editor ever envisioned. And because it's my baby, this is where the refinement process is so important. This is where I take what was a mass of pages and turn it into a novel that people would enjoy reading. So my energy level at that point in the process is sky high.
I know, and again, Mercy is the book. Get 2 copies. You're careless, you'll lose one. Buy a third for a friend or a family, and then download a fourth. And I know you want everybody to see this, as you do all your books. But the world of reading has changed to the point where I still like to hold on to a hardcover book. But, my mom, who's 82, loves her Kindle. And I have other family members who just thrive on audiobooks. You have any thoughts on those?
Yeah, for me, I'm agnostic about the delivery system, about how you read. If you want to do ebook, if you want to do hardcover, paperback, audio, it doesn't really matter to me so long as you read the story, the same story throughout. I found that, my kids are both in their 20s. They only read hard books because the rest of their lives are consumed by computer screens.
Right.
They don't feel like relax on an ebook. My older relatives, like your mother, I know that they like it because they don't have to carry a bunch of books around and the font. They can just pop the font up hot big, and they don't have to worry about, reading glasses and things like that. But I tell you, the audio, the downloadable audio to your phone or your laptop or whatever device you have, it's skyrocketed. I mean, it's just, my publisher, I see the numbers of what I sell in that arena. It's like, oh, holy God, it was nothing before. Now it's like massive. And I guess it's just whatever is convenient for the devices we carry around these days. Certainly audio is convenient for that. You can just pop in your AirPods and off you go. Seems to be really, really popular. But, we always write off the real book, the print book, but it always keeps making a comeback. And it has, it's bought back into the ebook readers. And actually, I'm selling more print copies than I was 5 years ago.
Well, it's still got to be a thrill when you get the book in the hard copy for the first time, even 20, 50 books down the road. It's still got to be a thrill.
Oh my God! When they send me them with the first one off the presses every year, and when it gets to the office and I open it, it is. I mean, it's a total thrill because I like you pinch yourself because you're like, okay, I've been doing this a long time, but damn, it feels like the first time all over again.
Pretty cool.
When you pop that thing out of the envelope and you see it, it is a very cool experience.
So, do you read your own audiobooks, or do you have others do it?
Yeah, I know my limitations, and that's one of them. So I spend a lot of time picking the teams that read them. And years ago, I finally talked to the publisher. I said, look, God love my male narrators and all that, but I'm tired of them trying to hit the falsettos for the female. So we're going to have 2 people, male and female, read my novels from now on because they both have characters. And that's been probably a dozen years ago now. And it's worked incredibly well. And I like actors. So we normally, use actors who don't just read, but they perform the audiobook through the story. And that makes a huge difference. So I have several teams depending on the series. And I've really, hand selected them through auditions and things like that, where you listen to a bunch of people. And I think it's worked well because, a good performance on the audio they can lift the book up to a level I can. I'm just putting words down. I can't breathe emotion. I can't, speak them to people, but actors can in a way that really gives a whole nother experience for the reader.
We're going to run out of time here. We've got a minute or two, but do you include real people in your life, in your books, as a collection in a character, or maybe as a specific character?
Yeah, I've never taken somebody whole cloth and dropped them to a book, but certainly it's fair game to, idiosyncrasy, a physical tick somebody has that I've seen, or way somebody talks or walks. I certainly have taken that and grafted it onto characters. Certain way somebody has a way of conversing or arguing a point. I certainly collect those things because I'm writing about real life, but I'm fictionalizing it. But the way to make my fiction seem authentic is by basing it on real life, real life people, experiences I've seen, I've interacted with. So it's worked really well for me. And
the people with the ticks, do they know that you're talking about them?
Well, even if I'm not, I tell them I am because they love it either way.
Hey, quick word on the Wish You Well Foundation, please.
Yeah, it's our literacy foundation. It's our 20th year, and our last 2 years were the most money we've given out. I think because of the pandemic, the need was soaring. A lot of businesses closed. A lot of businesses stopped giving to these organizations, and so we tried to step into the breach, and we've funded a lot of programs, and we'll continue to fund them. The last 2 years, actually, in the midst of this pandemic, have been really, really good for the program.
I salute you for it. It'll be in the show notes on how you can contribute to it and find out more about it. It's always a pleasure, David. I love your passion for your work, and I look forward to whatever happens next. And please give my best to Atlee Pine and go get the book Mercy.
I will. Absolutely will. Great talking to you as always. Have a good holiday.
If you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance the one you're in, you need to do what I did. I called Team Hochberg. So did my family. My family called Team Hochberg. My friends called Team Hochberg. They're your trusted local lender. Sam, 30, first-time home buyer, called his dad, Pete, because the realtor's preferred lender wasn't responding to his calls, his emails, or his texts. Pete advised Sam to stop wasting time with the realtor's preferred lender and recommended Team Hochberg, the only lender he trusted to help his youngest son secure the financing on his very first home. That's a big deal. Team Hochberg answered Sam's questions, responded quickly to his texts, calls, and emails, and helped Sam secure the mortgage on his first home. Hey, here's breaking news. You are purchasing the home, and you do not have to use your realtor's preferred lender to secure the financing on your new home. See? You're in charge, and Team Hochberg gets it. Team Hochberg helped me, thousands of my podcast listeners, like Sam, secure financing on their new home, and they want to help you too. But they can't help if you don't call. 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. And don't forget to tune into Home Sweet Home Chicago, hosted by David Hochberg, Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. after House Smarts with Lou Manfredini on AM 720 WGN. Homeside Financial, an equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. Nice work, David. This is live from my office, and in my life where I have been so blessed, one of the things I've been blessed by is coming across people who are just extraordinary. And Joe McQuillen is one of them, as is his family, and he joins me now as a guest on the radio in the past, and somebody that we don't stay in touch a whole lot, but as a couple of upstate New Yorkers, we know we're always there for each other. And Joe, happy holidays. Nice to have you back.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I sure do appreciate you having me back on the show.
And as a guy who is experienced with much more pain than you ever deserve in this life, I want you to update folks who know your story before we actually get to the background here on how things are going for you and your family. Has it been a happy holiday season so far?
You know, it is. It is. And it's really just kicking into gear. You know, the holidays are, you know, my wife has a term. She stole it from somebody else, and I stole it from her. And it's called brutiful, which means it's brutal and beautiful.
Wow.
You know, so some of Christopher's friends, dear friends, got married this year, and just being at the weddings is beautiful. And these kids are all still part of our lives. You know, dinners and come meet at the grave, and we do a January 3rd, celebration of Christmas life that's started at the grave and ends up at our house. And this will be the 6th year we've done it in a row, and even during COVID, we had 40 kids out here. You know, and you know, so we've been blessed with extending our family even a little more with these kids that still love and keep Christopher in their hearts. You know, so so the season is that. You know, I still have a responsibility of bringing home a Christmas with 2 wonderful kids on this side and my beautiful bride. You know, it's funny. I just, because of timing, I decided to do this interview with you. I'm at his grave, looking at we have a howling coyote, metal piece of art behind his stone, and Christmas tree we put up, and I just, I feel it here. So I'm always touching base with my oldest boy. Well,
and it really is an amazing thing, because you've turned this tragedy that no parent should ever have to go through, and you've turned it into, and if I'm overstating this, you tell me, but you've turned it into what I believe is your life's work. And that
it is absolutely.
And that's helping people figure out grief, deal with grief, and know that it doesn't end on a day when you say goodbye at a funeral. It's a new beginning.
You know, it was a great line from a movie called Manchester by the Sea, and a woman lost her kids in a fire, and she said, "My heart was broken. It'll always be broken." You know, and that's how you go through life. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have a happy life. I have a fabulous life, and I'm surrounded by wonderful friends and family, and And I've lived a life beyond my wildest dreams, to be honest with you. And in many ways more fortunate than I ever deserved, as we were talking about earlier. But it's just now part of the deal is, I'm going through this, knowing a piece of my heart's on the other side with my boy who was 21 when he crossed over in 2016.
The first book, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side, was really the beginning of a huge learning curve for you. You and I are about the same age, and we come from a time where when you talk about communicating with the beyond, when you talk about mediums, when you talk about some things like thin spaces and things like that, guys our age were trained to go, come on, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
But there's a beauty to your story and your connectedness to Christopher, which gives me goosebumps every time I talk to you. So here's what I want people to do. I want you to get the original book, if you don't have it already, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side, and know that his latest is called We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side, because your communication with Christopher continues. And I'm struck by the fact that you're at the cemetery, because I know you go there often. But let's start with that for people who are grieving for somebody they lost. I remember talking to you about this. I think I saw you in an interview about this, where at one point you thought, maybe I go too much. Is there something that's too much?
No, you know what? I think what you got to find what works for you, right? What works for you. And as I talk about in the second book, and you just mentioned thin places. And all that is places where the veil is thinnest between both worlds, this world and the other side, and for me, the grave is a thin place. It's not a sad, maudlin place where, I'm an old man feeding, nuts to pigeons, I come here because I feel him here. I know he doesn't live here.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas John, the famous medium, I asked him once, early on, and he said, "Do you go to the grave often?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He said, "Like recently?" I said, "Yeah, I was there yesterday." He said, because Chris says you go there all the time, and you should continue to do that because it's a good place for you. He said, "I tell most parents, don't go to the grave. It's not a good place. But I'm telling you, you should." I found a number of places across the country that are thin for us, and I think what, listeners need to do is try to find their thin places. I do a lot of my writing in my home office.
Right.
That was Christopher's bedroom, and it's a very, his energy moves very, very, very freely through there. So as soon as I sit down behind my desk, boom, I just feel warmth, and I feel him around, and a lot of his stuff is surrounding on the walls and our sports paraphernalia and such. So that's a thin place for me. Beaches on the Gulf Coast of Florida, Sarasota, Siesta Key, Lido, they're thin places. Why? I don't know. I have a theory, and as long as we're out there, I have a theory that I probably had past lives there that were very, very happy for me, and that we probably have been through past lives at those spots with Christopher. Right. So that's why I think, as soon as I step outside in that air and put my feet on the sand, usually at night, I feel this sense of Christopher around me.
Well, take me through, if you will. Well, actually, we should back up just a little bit.
Sure, we should.
The tragedy of this is your buddy and his pals, just athletic, good-looking young guys, and weren't troublemakers, weren't guys stirring it up. And one night they're hanging out, and they end up taking a late-night canoe ride in the winter, and we lose 4 of them, and four kids, including Christopher, which obviously totally rocked the community in ways you couldn't imagine. So anyone that's lost a child, the 5 stages of grief are very real. But I'm intrigued and I guess inspired to hear that your office is his bedroom, because there's a notion that all of us, I think, would think at first, and that is you want to run from the places that hurt the most. How did you get over that, where you wanted to be closer to his things and who he was, and how long did that take?
Steve, that's a great question. I'll tell you, just backing up, is that these kids were home for Christmas in 2016. It's Christmas of 15, January of 16. They were all going back to college after the weekend. They ran up to a lake house in Lake Beulah to kick up their heels, a dozen of them, shoot pool at a local joint, have a few cocktails, and they ended up back at the lake house, around midnight, and the party continued, and four of them strolled out with a snoot full of alcohol and layered clothing and untied Timberland boots that they all wore, and saw a boathouse, jumped in, a 3-man canoe, and none of them made it back, So when I got the message that said Chris and his friends were missing, I jumped in my Jeep and threw my dog in the car, and we started heading up. I really assumed I was going to find him in somebody else's lake house on a couch,
sure,
eating Captain Crunch, or in a boathouse with a pretty co-ed.
Right.
I certainly didn't think that I was going to get the message that I got, halfway up the drive that said, the uncle who lived a couple doors down called and said it was no longer a search but a recovery. So I finished the drive knowing that he had to go somewhere. 15 years before on a lark, I had seen a medium who told, the most of the reading was a little mundane because there was no desperation. I didn't need much. Right. But my dad came through, and he was a railroader, and we were all railroaders as kids in school. And she said, I have a railroad lantern in my office. And she said, your dad's here holding a caboose and telling you railroad. So it was like, wow, okay. Iron Joe was on the other side. Didn't give me the answers to the universal questions. But I kind of put that in my emotional file cabinet. And 15 years later, when where I got the news that Christopher had drowned, I immediately had recall and said, wait a minute. If my dad's somewhere, my kid's with him. Right. That's how McQuillen. That's how we roll. Sure. And that started my search. I knew then that let's either figure this out, kind of find out what the keys are to the other side. What does that mean? Because I really didn't have any idea. And if it's hokey BS, Steve, let's cross it off the list, right? I'm a pretty practical, boots on the ground kind of guy. I was a car dealer. I spent 30 years in the car business. Yep. I'm not a naive guy. You're not going to sell me a bill of goods. But I started meeting with mediums, spirit sessions, seeing speakers speak, taking in spirit circles, anything that I could that could get me an edge. And it wasn't long that, it started with a phone call right after he drowned where a medium that I had talked to 15 years before moved to Arizona. And she said to me, she told me things that I didn't know. I didn't find out until I got the fact, until I got the coroner's report. She knew everything that happened. 6 months later, I went and saw a medium that I'd found on this great author, Bob Olson's website. Mm-hmm. I went and saw him, and I came to the same grave I'm looking at right now. And before I did, I took this leather bracelet that says Dad on it from Disney World that Chris gave me when he was 5, when we were there. Took it out of a drawer. I hadn't had it on in 16 years. Put it on. I had moved them one grave over because they had, in the snow on January 8th, it was snowy, and they buried them next to another couple, and that wasn't going to do. Sure. I raised a little hell and wrote a check and moved them over. So the ground in June was still, the dirt was still loose, so I planted shamrock seeds that I had ordered the night from Amazon. I go see a medium. He said, your son's here. He said, you were in the bracelet he gave you, and that you were somewhere today, you were somebody where planting something at his grave. Wow. Well, where did you plant? That's when it went, Steve, from believing to knowing, and that quest has kept on going on 6 years. It'll be 6 years, January 3rd. And
the amazing thing about your book is because you write the book in a beautiful way, and you're not a guy who said, boy, I can't wait to be an author. Yeah, but you have an ability to tell stories, and you bring in humor in all of this, which is amazing considering what you and your family have gone through and go through. But there's a sense in the new book, we're not done yet, Pop, that the evolution of this relationship with Christopher has changed as well. And he seems like he's guiding you in new ways. Am I overreading that?
Not at all. I mean, you're reading it exactly what it is. And it's funny, after I was finishing up the first book, I was feeling a little melancholy, thinking, here's this great book that I had been, working on with my son, who'd been involved in every keystroke, every paragraph. and it was coming to an end. And he came through to me and said, we're not done yet, Pop. We're going to do this until you cross. And so all of a sudden it was like, okay, I get it. It's not one and done. This is a path for me. And he says, you know me. So, but your audience, if you look on the cover of the book, I have a brush cut. I have a broken nose. I don't look like a guy that would light sage and have candles burning at 3 a.m. and aligning my chakras, but I do every single one of those things to enhance the energy to be able to connect with my son, which I do successfully to this day a couple times a month.
And that's the thing that is so hopeful for people to hear, I think. And that's why I think when you get the book, we're not done yet, Pop, and you read it, you're going to have that similar feeling. So this is the kind of thing too that I'd recommend for somebody. Maybe you love somebody that's going through this, and you just want to do something for them. It's what you said before, Joe. This doesn't have to work for everybody, and it doesn't have to be something you buy into the moment you pick up the book. But it may be something that helps you, and that's what you do in your speeches, and that's what you're trying to do here.
And you know what? And maybe it's something like I had gotten that message from my dad 15 years before. Maybe something you read is going to click years later when somebody you left has made that journey across. Maybe this is what's going to kick it in for you to know that they're not gone. I mean, energy doesn't get destroyed. It changes form. We're running around here, Steve, in meat suits. We're spiritual people having a physical experience right now. Which is, to be honest with you, I thought a pretty unique thought that I came up with. But the bottom line is, this was something that there was a Catholic priest who came up, years ago, who said the exact same thing. His name was Chardin, Pierre Chardin,
okay.
1881 to 1955. And he said, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So the bottom line is, all this talk of new age, it's only new for us.
Exactly.
Nothing new about it. This priest fell out of favor in the 1920s because of his belief in the metaphysical, from the church. And so this is nothing new, and the people that you love don't evaporate and go away. They're somewhere accessible. You just got to do your job. You got to do a little work.
What do you say to what do you say to people who maybe don't come from a Christian set of beliefs? It could be any religion, or maybe they're not even that spiritual, and there's a fight that goes on internally that they'd like to be able to communicate. Obviously, the people they love and lost, but they have skepticism about formalized religion. How do those two things come together?
Well, I don't attend. I got no beef with the Catholic Church, but I don't attend Mass very often. This is my church, looking at his grave. My church is at beaches at night. So what do I tell him? Take a shot. And if it doesn't work, we'll refund all your misery. How's that? And, but if it's not for you, I get it. I'm not selling you anything. You know what I mean? But if you're a parent who lost a kid, Steve, and you think it's over, she's now a friend, Susan Giesman, who's a brilliant author. She was the assistant to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. She was a commander in the Navy, and now she's a medium. She lost a stepdaughter. Now she's a medium. Traveled the country, well-known author, and one of her books quote is, "We're not done," or "Still right here." And I steal that often when I'm inscribing books. I'll give her credit, but steal it because it's a good line.
It's a great line.
Your kids they're still right here. What are you going to do about it? So, the party's not over. And I said this to you too when we talked, in 18, is that I would rather be abysmally ignorant of everything metaphysical and be able to watch the Bills game with my son eating the Lou Malinotti's pizza last night.
Right.
But that bell can't be unrung, right? It happened. So I'm not ready to face the world without my son. So I want to find how to connect. And if you're a parent, pull up your big boy pants and try to figure this out.
Yeah. Look, it's a beautiful thing. It really is, and
it is a beautiful thing.
And it's a wonderful gift that you've been given, that you've taken the time to do the work and learn about, and you're trying to pass it on. Before we run out of time, I want to ask you about two people. One, of course, is your wife. Your wife, I believe, is a social worker, correct?
Well, she's a therapist. She's got her master's in social work.
Okay, so as a therapist, it's the same line for me, and that is, you're trying to help people figure out their problems and solve their problems. Something like this feels especially cruel considering her background. And as you know, losing a child can really, really pound on a marriage. What do you attribute to the ability to you two staying together and being as close as you've ever been?
Brilliant question. And just recently, not only is she a brilliant therapist, but she became certified grief counselor too.
God bless.
So talk about carrying that torch.
Right.
So the numbers upwards of 80% of parents who've lost kids end up divorcing. And what I attribute it to is our complete adoration for our oldest boy and our willingness to let each other grieve our own way. Right. I adore my wife. Always adored my wife. First time I laid eyes on her, my goose was cooked. And we've been married 35 we just had 30-year anniversary. But the thing is, we grieve differently. I put as much activity in every day as I could to avoid feeling, and she shut it down for 6 months. Yet we both supported each other, loved each other, and came through it, because of the love that we shared for this boy. And you know what? You talked about, God, a belief in God. I don't think God took my son. There was a fabulous book called The Shack. And in this book, a man lost his young daughter horribly. And God came to him and said, just because I work incredible good out of unspeakable tragedy doesn't mean I orchestrate the tragedy. So once I got over the fact that God doesn't move us around like pawns on a chess piece, I knew that God was the guy holding me and keeping me up, supporting me while I got through those dark days. My son's with him. My son's with my family on the other side. Why? Because I've had mediums name them by name. And there's nobody that will know the names of these guys.
And as you've said and you say, you will see him again. And that time will come, and there's your reward. The other person I obviously want to ask you about is Christopher, because in all the years that I've done this, when I run across people who've gone through what you've gone through, they run into people every day, and they're well-meaning people, but they don't know what to say. They don't know how to talk about it, and they feel like if they bring up the child you lost, it'll make things worse, knowing full well that you live with that every day. It's no surprise to you. So my finding is always right. My finding has always been, and this particular goes to Gold Star families too, is talk about your kid. Talk about who your kid was in this life. And I think that's an important thing for people to know. So tell us about Christopher.
Well, Christopher was an amazing kid. He was beautiful. He looked like his mom.
A good-looking kid.
Little wild like me. I'm 36 years sober, so I was a pretty wild kid. We got each other.
Right.
Good athlete, real good friend of the underdog. Sunday, we went to Penguin Players, which is a troupe of emotionally disabled kids, a lot of Downs. They're not kids anymore; they're adults. They do stage plays. Christopher wanted to be a special ed. He was at NIU. And he was a mentor in that program. So we support that program. We're a big part of that program. They're a big part of our lives, So here's this good-looking party boy kid, fun athlete. But what's he doing? He's working as a mentor on a stage with disabled kids.
Right.
That's my kid. So his spirit, his generosity, his love didn't end when he transitioned. I know that on the other side, because I've been told this by mediums who are experts, that's what he does on the other side. He helps kids with trauma who cross over, who don't know what's going on. And he's always been like a Pied Piper for kids. We go to a family outing, and there'd be kids crawling all over him, and he was patient, played ball. He's a special kid, and he's a special spirit. He's still, when I cross, he's told me that. Dad, the minute you take a step across, I'll be there. My sister who I adore, was his godmother, and we lost her at 19. And I was with her the week before she transitioned. She had cancer for 4 years, battled it bravely, and then said, "I'm done." This woman was just a superstar and adored Christopher, his godmother. And she said to me, "Honey, you gave me the greatest gift. I read your book, and I'm not afraid to die." You know, from somebody who brought me that much love and support. On the next birthday of mine, January 9th of 2020, I went to see Medium, which I do every birthday. And she said, "Chris is here, but so is your sister."
Wow.
And she wants you to know, "Honey, thanks for the greatest gift."
Wow. You know what? You're blessed. It sounds so counterintuitive considering what you've gone through and where you're sitting right now, but you truly are blessed, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. And you know what else? I know what's next. So I'm not afraid to die.
Right.
I'm not going anywhere. You know, I'll be 65 in January, hung up the hockey skates finally, smartened up, play a lot of golf, work. I like to work. I'll be in Florida for 2 months. The kids will come back and forth. Sally will come down for a week and give her a break from me. And so I do a lot of writing down there. I stay at Marcia's house. Her kids still have the house, so I stay there and I'm on a golf course and I'm writing. And so I have this wonderful life. But, you know, if I got the tap on the shoulder, Steve, and said, "Hey, bring him up from the bullpen. You know, you're pitching tomorrow." You know, I'm okay.
Right.
Because I know what's next. I get to be with my kid again.
You know what? You're an inspiration. You always are. I have such admiration and respect for you. Congratulations on all things in life, including your long run of sobriety. And my own brother will celebrate 18 years on New Year's Day. And
God bless.
In this life, we all have roads to travel, and the path you're laying down for the rest of us is really important. So once again, I hope you'll get both books. If you haven't already gotten the first, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side, do that and get We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side by Joe McQuillen.
They're both on Amazon, and my website is joemcquillen.net.
Thank you, Joe, very much. By the way, we do charitable mentions all the time here on Live from My Office. Drop me that note at thecochronshow@gmail.com with a charity you'd like a plug for, and we'll be happy to do that. The reason I bring it up is because Joe McQuillen has a couple of organizations, I should say, that he and his family support, and I hope you'll consider it as well. One of them is the In Balance Academy, inbalanceacademy.com. Another is the Penguin Project at penguinproject.org. In Balance Academy is all about addiction and recovery. The Penguin Project is a beautiful thing. It's a way for community theater to be open to those who are developmentally disabled at least once a year, all around the country. And I hope you'll take a look at both. As always, in the show notes, we link these, as we do to the organizations that I often talk to Mr. Baldacci about, Feeding America, and the Wish You Well Literacy Foundation that he and his wife have spent so much time, money, and effort on to make sure that people are able to enjoy books and life and reading. So we thank Baldacci and also Joe McQuillen for the charitable work they do as well. And we thank you for listening. And we thank Ross Cochran for putting this all together. We'll come back with a Deep Six episode with my friend Patty Steele next time we get together on Live from My Office.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Support the show by subscribing wherever you're listening and by telling your friends about it. Follow Steve on all social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And make sure you check out this episode's show notes for relevant information discussed during the conversations. You can also email the show directly at thecochranshow@gmail.com with any questions or comments. And that's the best place to tell us about your favorite nonprofit so we can make sure we mention them on the next episode. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event. And occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.